Now, we're going to continue our series on God and politics. Two things you never talk about, right? Religion and politics, but we're going to talk about them for weeks on end because I want you to be able to talk about them in an intelligent and a Christian fashion. Okay? Now, I'm going to use a couple of illustrations today that are not so Christian. How many of you know Winston Churchill? Okay, personally. No, not exactly personally. No, see, I like it when people take things literally. Kind of by reputation. Okay, well, good man, bad man. Good, yeah, very good. How many of you know Lady Astor? She's the first lady member of Parliament in Britain, in Great Britain, actually in England. Anybody know Lady Astor? Okay, Lady Astor and Winston Churchill had kind of an ongoing relationship kind of a thing, more verbal than anything else. But one day, Winston Churchill went to Lady Astor, and she was throwing a costume party. And he asked her, what disguise should I wear? And she says, why don't you come sober? You know, I don't know if you have friends like that, but sometimes we need to be told, sometimes we don't. Another time, she told him, Mr. Prime Minister, if I were your wife, I would poison your tea. She actually told him that. And he responded with, well, Lady Astor, he said, Madam. He says, Madam, if I were your husband, I would drink it. I don't know. Another time, he approached her and he said, Madam, would you... Let's see. Okay, we're okay, I think. Madam, would you sleep with me for £1 million? And, pounds are like dollars there. And she said, well, Mr. Prime Minister, I suppose I would. He says, well, would you sleep with me for £1 million? And she thought for a second. She said, well, Mr. Prime Minister, I suppose I would. He said, would you sleep with me for a penny? And she says, what kind of woman do you think I am? And he said, well, we've already established that. We're just haggling about price now. Now, what price is probably the question we need to ask our political leaders. What price would you sell out your integrity? At what price would you say, this is the end of where I'm going to go? And that's why today the title of our message is Leaders with Character, Priceless. Okay, you've seen the commercials on TV where there are certain things that are just priceless. And leaders with character, political leaders with character, are priceless, and we're going to talk about that today. And we need to ask people, what's your price? I remember back in 1989, Jim Wright was the House Speaker, and he was forced to resign. And in his resignation speech, which is kind of crazy, I wish he had known this ahead of time, he prepared this for his resignation speech. He says, fame is a vapor, popularity an accident, riches take wings. Those who cheer today may curse tomorrow. Only one thing endures, and that is character. Only one thing endures, character. Those are the words of Horace Greeley. From time immemorial, we have believed in character, and we've seen a shift in our nation lately, haven't we? In the last couple of decades, we see a shift away from character to what? What do we value now? We value performance, don't we? If you lower my taxes, I don't care who you sleep with. Okay? If you lower my taxes, I don't care what kind of bribes you take. If you lower my taxes, if there's some benefit to me, I don't care what you do because your private life is your private life. I don't think so. And so today we're going to take a look at that, and we're going to study character, because I believe character is the greatest issue facing America today. We can talk about the economy, we can talk about the drought, we can talk about terrorism, but I say today the greatest crisis facing America is a crisis of character. Are we the same on the inside as we are on the outside? Now take a personal evaluation here too, because we're going to be talking about political leaders, but that's just a thin disguise so that you will examine yourself. I'll be straight up and honest with you there, okay? I want you to examine yourself to see if you're the kind of person that you would elect to public office. So I want you to evaluate your character and ask yourself, is what I am on the inside the same as what people see on the outside? Now, we're not going to talk about it today, but integrity is where you're the same on the inside as you are on the outside. Have you ever been in a room of people and you just have to say, boy, I better not do this or that. I normally do that. And I'll be honest, I do that. Okay, I like to kind of pop off. Gus laughs. He says, I know. But sometimes, but one of my biggest problems is what goes into my head, what goes into my head comes out my lips. Anybody suffer from that problem? What goes in my head, I don't filter very much. And you can tell sometimes when I'm speaking in front of you, I don't filter much. I just kind of respond to the stuff and what comes out my mouth. Now, when I'm with Cindy at her workplace, I don't do that. I don't do that in front of her boss. Her boss is the CEO of the company. Well, used to be. And I got a little scared the other day because she came home and she says, oh, Jack called me, and that's her boss, and he wants to golf with us. I thought, oh, no. 4.5 hours of having to filter my speech. I don't know that I'm capable of doing that. And he may learn more about me than he desires to know. But many of us have that thing about the inside matching the outside. And I would hope that we've made some journey, and we've gone along the journey for some distance of time, to where we're comfortable with what's on the inside, and we don't mind it being exposed. Okay, so sometimes we have to hide stuff. Sometimes we have to go to Sacramento, to do things that we wouldn't do here because I'm afraid people might see us. I remember when I first moved from Southern California up here, it was amazing to me the number of people I saw from my church. I pastored another church, and when I walk around town, I would see people that knew me. And I thought, oh, that's alarming because I better behave. I didn't have a problem behaving, but you know what I'm talking about. In Southern California, you rarely saw anybody that you knew when you're walking around the mall. Okay, now you probably see people every day. When you walk around the mall, hey, hi. And I thought, oh, I better stay on my toes here. Because people want to make sure that what's on the inside is the same as what's on the outside. What do we hide best? Inside or outside? Yeah, we hide our feelings, our inside stuff, don't we? Yeah, so let's learn character today because it's one of the greatest things facing us today. Now, we've kind of gone away from character to evaluate performance, huh? If we like what somebody does, if it's beneficial to us, we don't really care what they do behind the scenes. Now, we don't accept behavior, though, in any other arena of life. Have you ever noticed that? When we talk about political leaders, we don't care about what they do behind closed doors, but when you go to a fast food restaurant, you care about what those employees do behind closed doors, don't you? In fact, if you go into a fast food restaurant, you'll go into the restroom, and there's a sign right there by the little soap dispenser that says, employees, wash your hands before returning to work. It's a law. It's a law. You have to do that. In fact, did you know that you cannot drive a bus, a public transit bus, if you're a pedophile? Okay, you can't do that. Okay, now, you also, if you're a doctor, you can't be taking drugs. They'll pull your medical license, right? And if you lack integrity, you may lose your license to practice law if you're a lawyer. Now, nowhere else in our society would we accept and exalt a man to the highest position of our nation that has character flaws. Everybody else, we say, well, would you go to a fast food restaurant and say, I don't care what they do behind closed doors, as long as my food looks clean, I'm okay. No, you'd say, no, you can't do that stuff. You have to wash your hands. So performance and character are vitally linked, and we should no longer overlook character for the sake of performance. Now, we've been duped, though, into believing that a person's performance is all that matters. Who they are behind the scenes is not all that important. Okay, Harry Truman said this, that he would never vote for a man who is unfaithful to his wife. Okay, he would never vote for a man who's unfaithful to his wife because he says this, if he would lie to his wife, he would lie to me. Okay? Kind of true, isn't it? So therefore, but what do we expect from our politicians today? Do we expect the truth? We don't, do we? What a sad indictment of our times. And what a sad indictment of us who would elect someone that we don't trust. Now, all of us would say, well, I didn't vote for that guy or that lady or whoever it is. But the truth of the matter is that the majority of Americans did vote for them. Otherwise, they would not be in office. So therefore, what does it say about us as a society? In Proverbs 29:2, it says this, when the righteous increase, the people rejoice. Okay, wouldn't you think? Now, righteous, let's define righteousness because we're going to use that word a lot today. Righteous means I'm in right standing with God. Okay? Now, how many people could claim to be righteous in right standing with God? Only those people who are forgiven for all of the junk that they've done that violates that. Okay? That's how you become righteous before God, by receiving the forgiveness that comes with a relationship with Him. Okay, so you're forgiven, so you're right. Now, have you ever had a friend that you were crossways with? You did something wrong to them. Okay, you did something wrong to your friend. Now, how did you get right with them? You went and said, hey, I fess up, I did wrong. Would you forgive me? And they say, man, I forgive you. And you hug at the end. And you are then what? Right with them. That's how we get right with God. And that's what righteous means. I'm right with God. And now there's this aspect when we're right with God that we do right to the people that are around us. We treat them right. Okay? Make sense? That's what righteousness is. Being right with God, doing right with the people around you. So here's what the writer of Proverbs says. When the righteous increase, when there's more people right with God, doing right with other people, well, guess what happens? The people rejoice. Wouldn't that be a wonderful place to live? Where everybody was right with God, doing right by you. You could trust everybody. Think about what that would be like. Oh, somebody comes to sell you something and they say, hey, you really need this. Okay, I trust you. What's it cost? Oh, whatever it costs. Okay, I'll pay. I need it. How many of you trust salespeople? We don't, do we? Because it's more right for them than it might be for you. Because we don't trust people. But if we lived in a place of righteousness where we could trust everybody, it would be a wonderful, wonderful place. But there's a flip side to this passage in Proverbs, and that is, but when the wicked rule, what? The people groan. Have you ever watched the news? And you just go, oh. A lot of times I'm in a meeting somewhere and somebody will be speaking and they'll say something and I'll literally groan and go, oh. Have you ever done that? Rob knows I do that. Oh, no. Because, we're moving on. Okay. Now, what does God desire of leaders? Number one, God desires moral character. God desires moral character. In fact, that's more than a desire on God's part. It's almost a prescription. If God says, if you want to be a leader, and especially when we think about political leaders in our nation, they need to have moral character. Notice what it says in Proverbs 14:34. Righteousness exalts a nation. If we want our nation to be right, if we want our nation to be solid, we want our nation to be recognized, we want our nation to be respected, what's necessary? Righteousness. Being right with God, doing right to the people. Okay, that's what it means. It exalts a nation, but sin, being wrong with God, doing wrong with people, we could say that would be a good application of sin, is a reproach to any people. Now, reproach, what does reproach mean? Anybody know what reproach means? It means pointing out what is wrong. Okay, it's what is wrong with your nation. And what does it say would be wrong with a nation? Well, sin. Okay, not being right with God, not doing right with people is a reproach. It's a sign that things are wrong. Now, it's been said this, and here's a difference between managers and leaders. Because when it comes time to elect officials, what do we need? Do we need managers or do we need leaders? Why? Because things need to change. What do managers do? Managers don't generally lead change. They manage the status quo. In fact, managers are bound by this thing called policies and procedures. And here's what it's been said. It says, good managers are people who do things right. Okay, now how do you know if a manager's doing things right? Well, you get out the policies and procedures manual and say, here's what the rules are. Is he following the rules? Well, yeah, he is. Then he's a good manager, right? I was bound to a church not long ago, and it was bound by policies and procedures, and it prevented us from doing a lot of good things. A lot of right things, because, well, the rules say that we have to do this, and the rules say that we can't use this for that, and the rules say that they should do this, and the rules are rules, and it was nuts. It was nuts, and it will drive you crazy. Policies and procedures. When you don't have the flexibility to meet the needs of people, the policies and procedures should go out the window, because leaders, on the other hand, it says, good managers, people who do things right, while leaders are good, with good character, are people who do the right things. The right things. Doing things right many times prevents you from doing the right things. Could you see how that could happen in a church, in a nation? We have rules. You can't do that. Even though it's right, we don't care if it's right or wrong. We have rules. And we become so bound to the rules that we fail to do the right things. Okay, now what kind of person does moral character describe? First of all, it's a person of righteousness. Okay, a person of righteousness. Okay, we've defined righteousness, right? Right with God through forgiveness, doing right to the people that they lead. Now, in Proverbs 16:12 it says, "It is an abomination to kings to do evil." Now, we don't have kings today, do we? But we do have political leaders that we need to respect and value. We talked about that last week. Okay, it's an abomination for leaders, I'll use that word, to do evil, for the throne is established by righteousness. Did you know that leaders who are not respected are not really leaders? They might be powerful. They might be able to make you do stuff you don't want to do, but they don't lead you, they coerce you. And there's a big difference between coercing people and leading people. Leading is a voluntary thing that people do, or following is a voluntary thing people do toward leaders. It's voluntary. I choose to follow you because you are righteous. You're right with God. Doing right to the people is what the writer of Proverbs here is trying to get to us. Now, leadership is a stewardship. We talked about this a little bit last week. We don't have inherently within us the authority that we need. That authority is transferred to us from an outside source. And so, therefore, even the President of the United States has authority only because the people of the United States have given that to him through the electoral process. So even presidents don't have ultimate inherent authority. They have this stewardship authority that's given to them. Now, we might aspire to different levels of leadership as well, but it's not inherent within us that we have leadership authority, but it is transferred to us by whatever authority we serve under. Now, authority is granted by people, and it's also granted by God. God says that what are the servants of our nation here to do? They're ministers of God, is what Romans 13 taught us last week. So our elected officials are ministers of God, given that authority by God to lead the people. Now, here in the United States, we're lucky enough to where we participate in that electoral process, and we transfer our authority to them as well. Now, how many people here believe we live in a democracy? Trapped you. We don't. We live in a republic. Okay, it's a republic where a democracy would be where we voted on everything. Okay, we would vote on tax laws, we'd vote on whatever, and we really don't. We elect officials to vote on that, and that's what a republic is, where we have a representative that we elect who represents us to the government. But it's kind of convoluted, hasn't it? Because they really represent the government to us. Many of our elected officials, what do? They usurp our authority and tell us what's good for us. And we are slowly inching down that slippery slope to where the government will have total autonomy from us and total authority over us. So we must be careful that we elect people that are described as we are going to describe today. Now, not only a person of righteousness, but a person of wisdom. Okay, a person of wisdom. Okay. In Proverbs 8:12 and verses 15 and 16 it says, and this is kind of a cool passage of Scripture, because this passage of Scripture is as if we have personified wisdom. Okay? Wisdom is now a person, and wisdom is speaking to us. And here's what wisdom says. It says, I, wisdom, dwell with prudence, circle that word, and I find knowledge and discretion, circle those two words, knowledge and discretion. By me, wisdom, kings reign and rulers decree what is just. By me, princes rule and nobles, all who govern justly. Okay, now notice what wisdom is. What is wisdom? And we've circled three words. Number one, it's prudence. Prudence. Prudence is what? It's that ability to stand back and look at things, assess things, and do what's necessary. Be prudent. You don't have to go overboard. It might be prudent to withhold. It might be prudent to be aggressive. It might be prudent, but prudence has that ability to assess what is needed and then provide it. Okay, so there's prudence, and wisdom dwells with that. It says this, and I find knowledge and discretion. Two things that make up wisdom. Knowledge. Okay, you have to have knowledge, don't you? So therefore, going to school, learning stuff is a good thing. And experiences of life are a good thing because it gives you what? Knowledge. Now it says knowledge needs to have something that accompanies it, and that is discretion. When should I apply my knowledge and how should I apply my knowledge is the key and the secret to wisdom, and what makes wisdom different from knowledge. It's the discretion, knowing when to apply it and how to apply it. So therefore, wisdom is this thing that comes to us, and it's a thing from which we should govern and lead. Wisdom should be the thing that gives us the ability to govern and to lead. Now, what do most of our political leaders use to govern and to lead? I'm going to say just one word: polls. Polls. Now, leaders today need to be able to assess things. They need to have wisdom. They need to have discretion. They need to have prudence. They need to have knowledge. They need to have all of those things. But what our leaders do many times, and you just kind of take this with a grain of salt, but evaluate it. Look at our leaders and see how they lead. They take opinion polls, don't they? And in those opinion polls, it kind of tells them what will be satisfying to the voting public. And then they'll cater their speech to that. Okay, whether they believe it or not. Okay, whether they're going to practice it or not. How many of you have ever heard a political person say something that they never did when they got to office? You know, it happens frequently, doesn't it? So now, what does that make them? I didn't say that. But it's kind of a harsh thing to say in church, but we're going to talk about that in a minute. But wisdom is not taking polls to find out where people want to go and then running fast and getting ahead of them and leading them. That's not what wisdom is. Wisdom is the ability to have discretion about what people need, prudence, knowing what people need, and then finding out how to get that there through their knowledge and their application of that knowledge. So that's the difference between wisdom and polls. Harry Truman, again, I love Harry Truman. He says this: I wonder how far Moses would have gone if he had taken a poll in Egypt. If you know much about those guys, they've been captives, they've been slaves for years, and all of a sudden Moses comes in and he says, hey guys, let's take a poll. Where do you want to go? Well, actually, let me think for a minute. He did take a poll, didn't he? When the children of Israel got ready to cross into the promised land, right? They walk through the desert. It's just probably an 11, 12-day trip to where they want to go. And so they get near the edge of the promised land, and the people got scared, didn't they? Because they heard rumors. What were the rumors? Oh, there's giants in the land. I mean, they're going to treat us like grasshoppers. They're going to step on us and squish us. And I know God told us that he's going to give us this thing, but I just don't know about the giants. And so now they say, okay, here, let me calm your fears, folks. Let's take one person from each of the 12 tribes. We'll send them in as a spy party, and we'll just see what we see. So they send those people down there. They go, they look, they come back, and they're hauling these huge clumps of grapes so big that they have to string it on a pole and carry it between two guys. That's how big the grapes are. And they say, yeah, it's just like God said. He said that it would be a land flowing with milk and honey. We would have crops we didn't plant, houses we didn't build. We're going to have all this stuff. Yeah, it's there, but yeah, there's giants in the land. Oh no, not giants in the land. Okay, let's take a poll. Let's take a vote of you 12 guys, and let's find out what we should do. So they do. They take a poll, and God got voted down 10-2. God said, go. The 12 guys said, 10 of the guys said, no, let's not go. Let's not go. And 2 guys said, yeah, let's go. Oh, got outvoted. And so now, God gives them a little punishment, doesn't he? He gives them a little consequence. And what was the consequence? Now you're going to wander around in the desert for 40 years. 40 years. This 12-day trip is going to take 40 years and 12 days. Okay, you're going to wander in the desert for 40 years. What was the purpose for wandering in the desert? Was it punishment? We might see it as that, but not really. What the purpose was for the unbelieving generation to die off, and God would raise up a new generation of people that saw him do all these wonderful things in the wilderness: provide water, provide food, provide all the stuff, lead by a pillar of fire by night and a pillar of cloud by day. They're going to see all that stuff, and they're going to go, I can trust God. So we're going to raise up a new generation of people that trust me, and then we'll go in and we'll take the land. Now, when the people heard that, they said, what? Oh, okay, we'll go. I don't want to wander in the desert for 40 years, so we'll go. And so they went trudging off, and remember, Moses says, no, that's not going to work. Actually, Joshua says, no, that's not going to work. Actually, Moses says it. Moses says, no, that's not going to work. And they go off anyway. And what happens to them? They get killed by the giants. Now, what was the consequence of taking a pole? 40 years of wandering in the desert. Sound like a good leadership skill? Not so good to me. Okay, so be wary of people who do this, that do that, that want to lead by taking polls. I read this story last week. This city guy moved out to a rural area. And in this rural area, he lived next to the road. And on the road, there was this sign that says, deer crossing. Okay, deer crossing. And deers got hit there all the time. And so, it makes sense to put up a sign. Now, the city slicker guy, he goes to the town council. And he says to the town council, I want you to take that sign down. They say, take the sign down? What? He says, yeah, a lot of deer are getting killed there, and I don't want them to cross there anymore. Sometimes you can't let people tell you what they need, because sometimes they don't know what they need. And we shouldn't give people everything they want. Anybody here raise kids? Yeah, man, I still to this day want to eat my dessert first. Nothing wrong with that. As an adult, I can do that, right? As a kid, I never got to do that. In fact, I never got dessert. That's why I'm so frail and skinny. Proverbs 16:16 says this, how much better to get wisdom than gold? Now, sometimes we think what? Gold is better. And if my political leaders can get more money in my pocket, I vote for that guy. A lot of times it's just pure economics when it comes down to voting for us. Now, notice what Proverbs says. How much better to get wisdom than gold? Okay, if you've got a guy up there that's got great wisdom, another guy up there that's got a great economic strategy that says, I'm going to put more money in your pocket. I'm going to put more people to work. Our economy is going to boom. Which do you vote for? I dare say that the guy with the great economic plan is going to win in the United States of America today. The guy with the great wisdom, not so much. But notice what Proverbs says. How much better to get wisdom than gold? To get understanding is to be chosen rather than silver. Okay? To get understanding is a better choice than getting wealthy. So therefore, it puts it on the right scale. Okay, another thing that a person with moral character is. It's a person of absolute honesty. Absolute honesty. Have you ever been absolutely honest? Now, here's something about honesty. Not everything that's true needs to be told. Okay? And some people will say, just being honest, just being real, just being whatever, and sometimes, are we a little overweight? It's awful silent in the house of God today. Are we? Let's be honest, we are, right? Do we need somebody to tell us? No. Exactly. We don't. So, just because it's true doesn't mean it needs to be told. Okay, but a person of absolute honesty. In Proverbs 17:7 it says, fine speech... Oh, we're all messed up now. Oh, here we go. Okay, fine speech is not becoming to a fool. Have you ever seen that? Somebody that is telling something that is not true, but they use fine speech to do it. Can you see through that sometimes? Yeah, sometimes we can see through that. Sometimes we can't. And it maybe gets proven later. But that's what the writer's talking about here. Still less is false speech to a prince. Okay, fine speech is not becoming to fool. Still less is false speech to a prince. Now, prince here, we can say, is our leader. Okay, leader of nations, leader of states, countries, whatever. But here it says that false speech to a prince is not very becoming. Why? Because they need to have the trust of people. What will destroy trust before anything else? Lies. Two ways we evaluate people, right? We evaluate them first on what they say, second on what they do. Do they stay true to that speech? If somebody comes to you and says, hey, I stand for a platform of making jobs, okay, and I never make a job, what's that make me? A politician. We can't get that on tape. Okay. But kind of does a little bit if we think that they don't tell the truth. Okay. Now, people are not liars because they tell lies. but they tell lies because they are liars. Okay, it's kind of the chicken or the egg thing, and actually, it's a becoming versus doing. Okay, or being versus doing. The being always is revealed in the doing. Okay, what you are is not always revealed by what you say, but more accurately by what you do. Okay, so if I tell lies, what does that tell about my inside? That inside I'm a liar, right? So therefore, when you find people that say things, political leaders that say, I stand for this or I stand for that, and you don't see that being performed, well, you know they're not telling you the truth. Now, never more are we more like Satan than when we lie. Did you know that? Jesus describes Satan as the father of lies. The father of lies. So when we lie, we're being no more like Satan than any other time in our life. So be very, very careful for you, and make sure that we evaluate the people that are going to lead us based on their ability to be absolutely honest. Okay? Now, another thing about a morally correct moral character is that it's a person with righteous friendships. And I use that word advisedly. Righteous friendships. Notice what it says here in Proverbs 22:11. He who loves purity of heart and whose speech is gracious will have the king as his friend. Why would the king choose friends like that? Because kings need counselors and advisors. Leaders need counselors and advisors. Now, as a leader, you don't automatically know everything, do you? So you need some people that fill in the blanks for you. Every one of us in our lives needs somebody to help fill in the blanks because we don't know everything. Have you ever met somebody that's a know-it-all, though? Yeah. I remember Cindy's dad when he was still alive. He was a know-it-all. He knew everything. I mean, this man he would just blow you away. He knew more about religion than I did, even though I was a pastor. He knew more about family life than I knew, even though his family was kind of scattered. He knew more about politics than I knew. He knew more about everything than I knew. And if you wanted to find out, he would tell you. He knows everything. And it scared me a little bit because when he passed away, I thought, oh no, who's gonna carry on the knowledge base for our family? Well, lo and behold, his son stepped up. And Uncle Craig became the know-it-all. But every family has a know-it-all, right? I'm being a little facetious here. I didn't really trust him with all that stuff. But when you talk to them, they just know everything. They know more than you do. And so being a know-it-all many times is a detriment to us rather than a help. He who loves purity of heart and whose speech is gracious will have the king as his friend. Okay? You need to be wise. You need to be honest so that you can be a consultant to people who need your help. And when a king has people surrounding him like that are righteous, that can give the proper advice and the proper help, the proper counsel, then we can have greater security. Proverbs 29:12 says, if a ruler listens to falsehood, all his officials will be wicked. Okay? Because if a leader listens to that and incorporates that and spreads that, everybody in the whole downline of the government kingdom is going to be just as corrupt. Okay? Okay. Third, next thing is a moral character. Moral character is a person living by moral absolutes. Are there moral absolutes today? There are. Do people live by them? Not so much. Not so much. Proverbs 31, 1-3 says this. And this is kind of a cool passage of scripture because this is written by a man named King Lemuel. And what he's remembering and what he's writing down is what his mom told him when he was a kid. So his mom gives him this advice, and he writes it down for us, and he says this, the words of King Lemuel, an oracle that his mother taught him. What are you doing, my son? What are you doing, son of my womb? How many guys have ever heard that, from mom? What are you doing? What are you doing, my son? Am I the only one? Because I've heard that. Okay, what are you doing, my son? What are you doing, son of my womb? What are you doing, son of my vows? Now, moms make a vow. What do you think the vow moms make is? The vow Mom made to King Lemuel was, I'm going to raise you to be the best person I can imagine. Okay, the best person I can raise you to be. And that's basically every parent's vow. They're going to raise their kids to be the best person. And I don't know about you, but in my experience as a parent, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to raise my kids to be responsible adults that could carry on life, okay, without me. Somebody could be independent from me. Now, do all of your kids get treated equally? No. Because kids should be treated getting what they need, not what's equal. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. So therefore, remember that. Kids get what they need, not equality. Okay. Now, here's what she says. She made this vow, I'm going to raise you to be the best son that you can be. Okay, verse number 3 says, do not give your strength to women. Okay, in other words, don't... That's a little tough, huh? In church. Okay, don't be promiscuous. Okay, how's that? Is it? Okay, and don't give your ways to those who destroy kings. Now she's talking here about substances, like alcohol, drugs. Don't get so messed up on that stuff that you can't be a wise leader. Now, if a leader can't control their own passions, let's say that they are promiscuous, and let's say they get involved in drugs, they get involved in alcohol, and it becomes a controlling issue in their life. If they can't control their own passions, how are they going to perform in a crisis, do you think? We think, they could separate those things, and I don't believe so. I don't believe so. You know what has saved many a president? Good counselors. Good counselors has saved many a president. And many times, who's the guy that gets the credit, though? The guy at the top gets the credit. But the truth of the matter is, some of those wise counselors have helped them. Okay? And again, if they can't keep their promises to their spouse, can we trust them to keep their promises to us? No, we cannot. And we like to think that in some kind of a fantasy world, we can separate those things, but we truly cannot. Because what they are with the people they love most, they're going to be worse about with the people they don't even know. Okay? That's just human nature. Okay? Now, another thing is moral character is a person who protects the weak. That's one of the things I really like about our church is that we have this idea that, we're put here for a purpose, to touch people's lives, to make their lives better, to bring them to a better place in life, to do whatever it takes on that. And so in Proverbs 31:8-9, it says this, open your mouth for the mute, okay? Speak for those who can't speak for themselves, for the rights of all who are destitute. Okay, are there destitute people in the United States of America? Yes, there are. Open your mouth, judge righteously, defend the rights of the poor and the needy. Okay, there's some people here that we ought to defend. Okay, the poor, the needy, and I'm going to throw in another one here that is not spoken of directly, but is implied when it says, open your mouth for the mute. I'm going to say the unborn. I want us to rethink our position on the unborn. You know why? In the Bible, we are given permission. In fact, we're even instructed to do what? To procreate. Okay, remember in the Garden of Eden, God said to Adam and Eve, be fruitful and multiply. Now, some families have taken that on themselves, and they have 15, 20 kids, whatever. Okay, 15, 20 kids, and, they're taking that, they're doing that. And that's cool, because what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to procreate. Now, we're given permission to have children. We are not given permission to end their lives. Now, I know that there's a lot of people in the United States who would say this. Well, it's not truly a child. It's not truly a life until it can sustain life outside the womb. Okay, thank you, Nancy, because I'm with you and I'm going to talk about that. Okay, just you said that just in case I didn't get there, huh? Okay, now think about this. Just as a fetus needs its mother to sustain life, I'm going to suggest so does a baby on the outside of the womb need its mother to sustain life. Because I'm going to tell you this, they don't feed themselves. They don't change their own diapers. Don't you wish they did? But they need someone to care for them even outside the womb. We could go and talk about the beginning of life where God knew you in your mother's womb, okay, and numbered your days. Okay, so God knew you in your womb. And when God says, I knew you, what he means is, I knew the life that was in your mother's womb. So therefore, I'm going to suggest that, wherever you stand on this spectrum of abortion, that you take a look at when does life begin. Because what we've done is we've changed it so that it's no longer murder because it's not life. If we deemed it as life, then it would be murder, correct? Okay, so let's take a look at that, and I want you to make your stand, and I want you to make it intelligent, okay? Be careful who you listen to, even me. Do your own research, read the Bible, find out what God says about life, and then adopt that attitude, okay? Now, another thing that a morally righteous person does is that they bring stability. In Proverbs 29:4, the first part of that verse, by justice a king builds up the land. Okay, 2 words here: safety and security. Safety and security bring stability. It's like 2 ants. They were out on the golf course, and this guy comes up to his ball, and they're on the dirt there, and he takes a mighty swing at his ball. Grass and dirt fly everywhere, but the ball stays there. I don't know if you've golfed, but that happens sometimes. Okay, and so he steps back, and he takes another mighty lash at the ball, and grass and dirt fly everywhere. And one ant looks at the other ant and says, "Hey, what are we going to do?" And the other ant says, "I'm getting on that ball because it's the safest place on this golf course." Okay? That's what our leaders need to be able to provide for us. The safest place on the golf course so that we don't get hacked by these people that don't know what they're doing, and so that we can have safety, security, and stability. Now, I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's the economy. I don't care if it's terror. The elected officials should bring security and stability. One of the great kings of the Bible was Solomon. Solomon brought great stability to the land. Remember, his father was King David. King David was credited with expanding the kingdom and making it very wealthy. Solomon inherited that wealth, and he became the leader that's known as wisdom. Okay, he was the wise leader. One day there was this situation, and the 2 ladies were trying to live, and they each had a baby, and they were sleeping in bed at night, and one of the mothers rolled over on her baby, and it died. And so what she did was she grabbed the other lady's baby and said, "This one's mine." And so the other lady said, "No, that's my baby. No, it's my baby. No, it's my baby." And so they said, "Let's go take it to King Solomon." And so King Solomon took the baby, and he says, "Okay, you both claim to be the mother of the baby. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to cut it in half. Bring me a sword." And as they were bringing the sword, one mother said, "No, don't. She can have it." And he says, "Oh, the baby's yours." Yeah, pretty wise guy, isn't he? Okay, and he's known for his wisdom. Now, why did he have wisdom? Because long before, he prayed to God, and he said, "God, I don't care if you give me riches. I don't care if you give me wealth. But give me wisdom to lead your people." And God says, that's a man I can work with. And so he gave him wisdom, and also what did he get as a bonus? He got tremendous wealth. He was one of the wealthiest kings in the history of time. And so he gets the bonus of wealth, but yet he also gets this thing called wisdom, because he knew his God had what he needed. So he says, "God, I want to be right with you, and I want to do right with people, so give me wisdom to be able to do that." Now, that's King Solomon. And so, therefore, he could bring stability and security. It was known as a time where there were no wars. In King David's time, there was war after war after war after war after war. And now in King Solomon's time, it's a time of peace. And he goes, safety, security, stability. Because he knew his God. Okay? Now, there's a second thing I want to talk about for just a minute. And that is, God gives us... Oops. Yep. That's it. God gives us the government that we deserve. Exactly. We can say, "Oh, we don't deserve this, but we really do, because who elected our government officials? Okay, when you look in the mirror, you see that person. Now, it's interesting here in Isaiah. Isaiah is a prophet in the Old Testament. And Isaiah's talking to his people about a future time. And he says there's a time coming, ladies and gentlemen, when things are going to be bad. And they're going to be bad because our leaders have not honored God. Our leaders have not honored God. And he describes what that time is going to look like here in Isaiah 3, 1 through 5. And he says this, "For behold, the Lord of hosts is taking away from Jerusalem and from Judah," okay, from us people, "support and supply." Now, he implies that God has been supporting them and supplying them. God's blessings, God's riches have been giving support and supply to the people through their leaders. Now, all support of bread and all support of water. We're going to lose our bread and our water. What happens to food? It's going away, ladies and gentlemen. Number 2, he says, the mighty man and the soldier, the armies are going to be decimated. We're not going to have an army to protect us. The judges and the prophet, okay, the people that bring justice to our land and the people that bring religion to our land, they're going to be gone. The diviner and the elder, the captain of 50 and the man of rank, the counselor and the skillful magician and the expert in charms. And I will make boys their princes and infants shall rule over them. Okay, your leadership is going to be children. All the people who oppress one another, everyone his fellow and everyone his neighbor. The youth will be insolent to the elder. Sound familiar? And the despised to the honorable. Okay, now, does that sound like something that's happening in our time? Okay. Okay, so therefore, God gives us the government that we deserve. He says, you want to follow me? Man, things could be really good. You want to be right with me? You want to do right by people? Things could be really good. But if you don't want to do that, well, then there's consequences. It's not that God punishes us. It's just that he gives us what we want. Have you ever wanted wrong things? I do sometimes. I want the wrong things. And God says, you want it? Okay, well, I'm going to give you a lesson. You're going to learn the hard way. You want to trust your money? How many people want to trust your money? You know, I do at times. I want to trust my money. And he says, okay, I'll give you some money. See how you do with that. Oh, not so good. It didn't work out. It didn't last as long as you thought. You know, so God gives us sometimes what we want so we can learn the valuable lessons of life. That greater dependence on him is what we need. We need to depend greatly upon God. Okay, let's sum this whole thing up. How should we vote? Okay, I'm going to tell you how you should vote. Okay, we're going to go down order by order of the things coming up. The presidential election, I'm going to tell you how you should vote, okay? Okay, will you vote the way I tell you to vote? I hope you do. Because first of all, you should vote principle over party. Okay? You know, how many times have I remember growing up in a Democratic household. Okay, we're Democrats, and that's what we do. We vote the party line. You know, came from the Midwest. We do this, and that's what we do. We just, if it's Democrat, I vote for that guy. I don't know who he is. I don't know what he stands for. I don't know I don't know anything about him. But he's a Democrat, and I'm going to vote for a Democrat. Okay. I don't know, I think we've kind of come away from that a little bit, but I do think that there are certain times where we will identify with a party certain values, and rather than research to see if that candidate holds those values, we will assume because they are a certain party, we will vote that way. So make sure that we vote principle over party. Make sure that you vote principle over pork. Now, I'm not saying anything bad about bacon here. I think you should always vote for bacon. However, there are certain political agendas that will bring a good thing to our area. Okay? And sometimes it's not fair. Okay, even if we're the recipients of it. Many times we'll find some of these politicians attaching what we call pork to federal bills. Okay, if I vote for this, I want this amendment here, and what it says is that you're going to spend so much money rebuilding my bridge. Okay, and that's what pork is. They put pork on top of all of this fat, on top of all of these bills that seem good and honorable, but they will put that on there just to get their vote. And they'll say, okay, well, we'll do that for you if you do this for us. And it's called politics. So be careful. Okay. Third thing, vote principle over pocketbook. Now, sometimes there are certain candidates and certain issues that will put some money in my pocket. And I'll tell you what, those are hard to avoid, aren't they? However, if it puts money in my pocket and it withholds money from someone else's pocket, maybe the principle is that they need it more than I need it. So we need to vote on principle, okay? Vote principle over person. Okay? And I'm going to give you 3 words here. Looks. I don't think we guys have as much a problem with this as maybe ladies do, because there's more male politicians. I don't know if I'm crossing the line here or what, but I am. I've crossed the line earlier anyway. So sometimes we say, that's a good-looking guy. And even we guys will say, it's a good-looking guy. He looks like he's got integrity. Looks like he's got an honesty. It looks like he's got character. I'll vote for the look. And sometimes that doesn't work out. Don't vote ethnicity. I think that we need more of this. We need a broader spectrum, and we need this ethnicity. Maybe we do, and I'm not saying don't vote for ethnicity, but what I'm saying is don't vote ethnicity over principle. Make sure that they have principles that we want to honor and that we want to abide by. Okay, third thing is gender. Don't vote gender, over principle. Some people say, political arena is a man's world. And I don't think that's necessarily true. In fact, it is not true. Politics is an arena maybe we need to extricate ourselves from, and maybe we need to go back to statesmanship. And there's a big difference between statesmen and politicians. Okay? And that's a sermon all in itself. Okay, last thing. Be careful about political speech. Don't vote political speech over principles. Principles over political speech. And evaluate a person's record. What have they voted for? What have they voted against? I think many times that we don't do that. And there's an organization that you can get online, and you can find the voting record of every one of your elected officials. You can find their voting record on all of the things. So make sure you do that.